Members of Congress, fellow Americans, nothing I'm proposing tonight should increase our deficit by a single dime. We need to take responsibility for our deficit and reform our government. Let's invest in our people without leaving them a mountain of debt. That is not sustainable. But I would just say this to the American people, freedom.
All right, folks, a GOP commercial showing Barack Obama as an empty suit, literally. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. I'm happy to say we're joined by Ed Rollins, senior political analyst for Fox News, former national campaign director for Reagan-Bush in 1984, and for Mike Huckabee as well. And Ed, welcome, sir.
My pleasure, Steve.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much. So, I doubt that he'll show up, an empty suit will show up literally, but how about the possibility that that'll happen figuratively?
In a way it is. I mean, this president is on the point of almost being irrelevant, and I don't mean that out of disrespect for the presidency, but I just think a year ago after his election, there were hopes that he would have a second term, that he would do some of the things that he talked about in that little clip there. It's really been a wasted year. So I think tonight he basically faces an audience, and certainly a Republican Congress, that sees him not as a significant player and not going to offer anything that they're going to be able to pass. And he'll continue a lot of the rhetoric of the sort of class warfare, which obviously is not beneficial to America and is not sustainable in the sense of a real campaign issue.
Would you have advised the president on the eve of the or the day of the State of the Union to use his executive power and unilaterally increasing the minimum wage for federal workers?
Well, I think the bottom line on that issue is that he's going to try and use his executive powers in many instances. But the key in my 40 years in and around Washington has always been you don't surprise your own side, you don't surprise the opposition. The minimum wage bill has been before the Congress. It's got tough sledding still ahead. By him attempting to do things by executive order where people question whether he really has that power to do that is without sort of some warning or some input from the Congress, I think is a very dangerous road to go down. Especially
since, whether you agree with the budget deal or not, whether you agree with the talk of immigration reform or not, there was a budget deal and there is talk of immigration reform. And did he run the risk of alienating Republicans by not only by doing what he did today, but by, I'm sure, making one of the centerpieces of his speech tonight a continuation of what he's been saying for the past month and what his people said on the air on Sunday, and that is he'll just use the pen. Is that an alienation that he now risks?
Well, it's two things. One, it's basically a declaration that you can't get anything from Congress, which I think for any president that's a declaration of real weakness, since the Congress has the power of the purse and the Congress has really the lawmaking powers, and I think to a certain extent the way presidents in the past, even when the opposite party has controlled the Congress, is that they have basically tried to find compromise and try and find things that they can agree upon. The budget was a perfect example of that, where they did finally get a budget out that through the efforts of Paul Ryan and Patty Murray in the Senate, that obviously not everybody's pleased with, but at least it's progress. I think this president has basically said, I'm not going to deal with this Congress. I'm going to go out and get some rhetoric and continue the class warfare that I've talked about since I first ran as a candidate. And I think it makes him more and more irrelevant by the day. This president has extraordinarily low approval numbers, both on his job performance and his personal appeal at this point in time. And unlike, or very much like, George W. Bush at this point in his presidency, there became a fatigue factor in which people were ready to turn the page. And I think to a certain extent, this is kind of the warring cry of what you want your party to run on in the midterm elections, in which obviously Republicans still have an opportunity to control the House and a very good chance of controlling the Senate. And I think this kind of rhetoric is not something that senators who are Democrats who are in marginal seats are going to want this president to come in and campaign for him on these issues.
Nobody really is talking about Obamacare right now. I'm sure he will spin it or try to spin it to the positive tonight by giving some millions of number in the millions of people who have signed up or enrolled. But the fact is they don't really know how many people enrolled, or they're not telling us, because supposedly if you just to put the policy in the shopping cart, they consider you enrolled, or they're telling you they enrolled. But there's a story out today, and we're going to speak to Senator Orrin Hatch right after you, sir, where Tom Coburn, one of 3 senators along with Orrin Hatch, who have come up with an alternative to Obamacare. Tom Coburn, who revealed that he has cancer. Since Obamacare kicked in, he's lost his oncologist. He's lost the amount of coverage also that he receives. I mean, just by this man telling his story, I almost wish that he was giving the rebuttal, so he could just focus on this and bring it back into the forefront again, because it's getting hidden away.
But first of all, nobody believes any of the numbers the government puts out anymore, whether it's the unemployment numbers or any of the rest of it. And certainly the Obamacare, which had probably the most poor start of any major administration program that I've seen, as I said, in the 40 years I've been around Washington in politics. More people are losing their health care by the day, and even those that are able to basically get other plans, Obamacare or private insurance, are finding dramatic increases in the cost. So this story is a long ways from being written, and I think at the end of the day, it's not going to work to what was promised. It's not going to work to the American public's satisfaction. And I think to a certain extent the key block that they needed to recruit and buy into this were those that were uninsured in the past, which many were younger voters, younger citizens, who decided they didn't want health insurance, and they're certainly not going to want it if it's more expensive and less viable than the stuff in the past.
We're talking to Ed Rollins, a senior political analyst, Fox News, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. 2 more quick ones to take advantage of your vast experience, sir. And one is to do with the Huckabee situation and the so-called war on women, the way the media has twisted what he said. Do you believe that, I don't see he said anything wrong. I think he accurately, in my opinion, described how Democrats have, if they don't view women this way, they've certainly led one to believe that they view the most important issues to women as free birth control pills and abortion on demand.
I know Mike very well, and I was just privileged to be his chairman when he ran for president the last time.
Right.
He's a very decent man. He's got a wonderful, very strong wife. He has an extraordinary young daughter. Who's a young adult. He lived with powerful women, and he basically understands what's going on. I think the debate on the abortion issue is still a debate in which you have to be very careful with your words, because the other side will blow things out of proportion. And I think Mike Huckabee basically is a very thoughtful man, and I think to a certain extent this is sort of taken out of context. And I think if he does run for president again, people will have a long time to see and hear who the man really is. And in my sense, he's a tremendous candidate and will be a very credible candidate.
What about Hillary, sir? Yesterday she brought up Benghazi. She was asked about it at a six-figure speech she was given, kind of a Q&A, and she's called it Benghazi was her biggest regret. This, of course, comes on the heels of her her last public statement, which was, what difference does it make? Do you foresee, as a man who's run campaigns, a possible ad against Hillary with those two comments played side by side?
Oh, sure. She's as she said herself, this was her she didn't use the term mistake, but her biggest regret. It certainly happened on her watch. The full story has not been told on this issue. We lost 3 Americans, including our ambassador, and it certainly was on her watch and on the president's watch. So my sense is it's certainly going to be a campaign issue, as will everything else in her record. So I think she's certainly going to run, and I think she's going to be a very credible candidate, and I don't see any Democrats that are going to beat her right now. So my sense is that there's a lot of other things that she'll have to defend, and that's certainly one.
Okay. Ed, thank you so much. I look forward to speaking to you again, sir.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Rollins, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Very interesting. Okay, when we come back, I can't wait to talk to Orrin Hatch, especially in the wake of the revelation by Tom Coburn that he's lost his oncologist. Tom Coburn, along with Orrin Hatch, 2 of the 3 senators who have come up with an alternate proposal to Obamacare. The media has been, pressuring and badgering almost every Republican that talks about the failures of Obamacare. Well, what's your plan? What's your plan? Well, now they have one, and we'll talk to Senator Orrin Hatch about it when we come back right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.